Okay, it says we are live. I'm just going to double check it before we begin. All right, it's up and running. We are working. So this session is for our 3rd and 4th graders. Hello, 3rd and 4th grade. It's Mrs. Herforth. And today we are joined by Daniel Jude Miller. He's been here. He's been so great. He's done 2 sessions already. He met with our pre-K and our kindergarten, and then he met with our 1st and our 2nd grade. So we give him a lot of credit for sticking on and spending his whole afternoon on the computer with us. But he's been really wonderful. He's told us so many cool things about his books that I didn't know. So it's been great to learn so many new things. And he's going to tell you all about himself and all about his book. So I don't want to steal his thunder. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Miller, and you're ready to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Daniel Jude Miller, and I'm coming to you live from just down the road, not very far, down in Binghamton, New York. And we are going to talk about a whole bunch of fun things because I am a person that makes books, and I'm going to show you how I make books. Okay, but before we get to any of the books that I have created, I first want to start with the most important book in my office, and it's actually this one here. Okay, it's a book called Pete and the Acorns, and I had nothing to do with this story. This story was given to me by a student at an author visit a long time ago. His name was Milan, and he wrote a book called Pete and the Acorns. He wrote it all by himself, and then he told me he did all the drawings by himself. And then he went on a little website you might have heard of before called Amazon, and his parents helped him get 1 box of his very own story. He gave a copy to everyone in his class, and he gave one to me. Now, here's why I start all of my presentations with a book that I didn't even make. It's because when Milan created this, he was in the 1st grade. And that's important for all of you to know because it means that if I can create books and Milan can create books, then that means that all of you can create books right now. You don't have to wait until you're old like I am. You don't even have to wait until you're finished with school. I meet students all across America that are creating their very own books today. And some of you might have already started, and that's amazing if you did. But if you didn't, then hopefully when I show you how I create a story today, hopefully that will help give you the tools so that you can get started as well. Okay, so let's go to all the people that work at my company. All righty. So at my book company, we have this guy. He's called the author, and he's in charge of writing all our stories. Then we have this gentleman. He's called the illustrator, and he's responsible for doing all our pictures. Then we have this fellow. He's called the designer, and that's just a fancy word for the person that takes the pictures and the words and puts them together. I actually have the best job out of all my employees because I get to be the speaker. And that means I get to go to schools and libraries and tell you what we all do and hopefully inspire you to do the same. Now, I know what you're thinking. All of these people look like the same person. And you would be correct because they are the same person. They are all me. I have to do every single job that is needed to do for a book, from the beginning to the end, from the idea to the words to the pictures to the finished story. It's all my job. But that's not true for most of the books in your library. Actually, most of the books you see, one person wrote the story, a second person did the pictures, a third one put it together, a fourth made the cover, a fifth and a sixth and a seventh. And that's one way to do it, to work together as a team. Maybe you like to write stories, but you don't really like to draw. Well, you can find someone who does, and you can partner up and work together on a book. Maybe you like to draw, but you don't think you have a good idea for a story. You can find someone who does, and the two of you can work together to make a book. But I also want you to remember that it is possible to do all the jobs that are needed by yourself. And that's how I do it. Okay, but this journey for me started a long time ago. Long before I had all these jobs, I had only one thing that I was interested in, and that thing was drawing. And I've been drawing since I was in about kindergarten. Here is a picture of me in the 4th grade. I went to school in New York City, and I wore a very uncomfortable tie to class every single day. I did not like it. But what I did like was drawing, and I was drawing all the time. I would draw things like helicopters and airplanes. I love drawing dragons and dinosaurs. Sometimes I would do sports logos. I know, maybe I'll tell you by the end of the presentation why I have all these hats behind me, because I wanted to be a sports logo designer very badly when I was in the 4th grade. Sometimes I would imagine stories about knights and skeletons and how they would fight each other in outer space. And every once in a while, I would do pastels. Those are those chalky, messy crayons that get on your fingers and sometimes on your clothes. I really, really wanted to be an artist. And I decided I wanted to be an artist when I was around 10 years old. And I decided that just like in a video game, where your character needs to level up and learn new skills so that they can advance further into the mission, that life was the same. And sometimes in life, you need to learn new skills and get better at the things you do so that you can get closer to your dreams. So I started leveling up by practicing all the time. I was drawing sports cartoons, and I was creating my own characters. This guy is a ninja dinosaur. Ninja dinosaurs need people to fight. So I created a whole bunch of enemies for him to do battle with. And the more that I was practicing, the better I was getting. And soon I was drawing like these characters that were almost realistic. So if any of you like to draw, I'm going to tell you the only 2 things that you need to know to become a better artist. This is the only stuff that you need to have in your head if you want to improve. Okay? Number 1, if you practice drawing a little, you're going to get a little bit better. But if you practice drawing a lot, you are going to get a lot better. I guarantee it. There are no secrets or tricks or magic involved. The only way to improve as an artist is by always practicing. And that's what I was doing. At that time, I wanted to be a comic book artist, and this drawing says that I was 12 years old when I did this picture. The second piece of advice I can give you now, if you want to become a better artist, is to never trace your drawings. Everyone asks me if when I was 12 did I trace this, but I did not. Because when you trace things, you don't learn anything. It's okay to copy from a comic book or a magazine or a picture, because when you copy, you make mistakes, and that's a good thing. Because when you make mistakes, you learn how to correct those mistakes. And that's how you become a better artist. When you trace, there are no mistakes, so there is no learning. I would draw things like Wolverine, and then eventually I was creating my own superheroes and giving them names and superpowers. But I wasn't good enough yet to get my dream job. So it was time for me to level up again. And I did that by going to a special art school. When you go to art school, you get to make art all day long. You paint and sculpt, you use cameras and computers, and they teach you how to do complicated pictures like this. And every morning when we would come to class, they would give us an idea, and it was our job to illustrate that idea. So on this day, they told us we needed to invent a superhero that got all his powers from a strange source. So I invented a hero that gets all his strength when he drinks coffee. I know it's very, very strange, but that's how art school works. Every day they would give us an idea, and it was our job to create that drawing. And these are the last 2 pictures I did before I graduated from that art school, and they look very different. I'll tell you why. It's because I had gotten rid of all my paint and all my brushes, and I decided I was going to do all my coloring in the computer. And in a second, I'll show you how I do that. But now I was a real artist. And I got my dream job up there in the Empire State Building in New York City. I used to work almost all the way at the top for a company that needed these type of drawings. Things about business and money. They would put these into newspapers and magazines. They needed me to do drawings about vacations and computers. They asked me to do drawings about medicine and insurance. Boring. Here I was, I had practiced my whole life to become an artist, and all I was allowed to draw were things about medicine and insurance and boring subjects. I liked aliens and spaceships and skeletons, but they never needed me to draw those things. But then one day I got lucky, I was coming home from that boring job and I saw one of these. It's called a manhole. And those are those holes they cut in the street that go down into the sewer. And sometimes in the winter, steam comes out of them. That made me think it looked like the smoke from a dragon's breath. So I started to think if there could be monsters all over New York City. Maybe there were creatures living in the hot dog carts. Maybe there was monsters in the taxi cabs. Maybe there was something in the subway. It was possible that there could be a monster at the Statue of Liberty. By the way, that's not the real Statue of Liberty. The real one is much bigger. Okay, so I had this great idea for a story, but the problem was I was 25 years old and I had never written a story before. Okay, they did not teach writing when I was in school like you are, and I was never taught how to write. So if I was going to become an author and I was going to do my story about the monsters in New York City, I was going to have to teach myself. Okay, and I first started with doing the drawing parts. Okay, the drawing parts I knew how to do very, very well, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I do little sketches. They're called sketches, and they're little drawings that I do with my regular black marker where I try to figure out what a character should look like, or maybe how many eyeballs they should have. This is an alien from Monsters in Manhattan Part 2. And then I do what's called the composition, and that means how all the pieces fit together on a page like a puzzle. Sometimes I start even testing the colors. And then I put it into the computer. Here's my blob from the Monsters book. Remember, I said I got rid of all my paint and all my brushes. So I scan it in. I have what's called a scanner. It's sort of like a copy machine. I put the drawing on the glass, and it takes the picture and puts it into the computer so I can do my colors. I color in the background first. When that's done, I do my characters. And when those are finished, I add special effects, which for the Monsters books, it's the green ghost fog that comes when a monster arrives. And it doesn't even matter what book I'm working on. It's always the same process. I do the drawings with my black marker here. When I like my drawings, they go into the computer where I can color in the background, and then I can finish the characters. And last, I can add special effects, which for the Everybody Wake Up book, it's the light that comes when the character yells. So every artist makes art different, but this is how I do every page for every one of my stories. But here I was explaining how it was time for me to level up. I knew how to draw very well when I got that idea for the Monsters book, but I had never written before, so I was going to teach myself. And I had heard that the three parts of a story were the beginning, the middle, and the end. But I'd also seen in a movie, the first Goosebumps movie, that the author of those books said a really good story is made up of the beginning, the middle, and the twist. And I like his version better, and I'll tell you why. It's because the ending is the most important part of your story. It's the part that people remember. It's the part they tell their friends about, and it's the part that will make them want to read your next story. So here's a fun fact. The ending, or the twist ending, is so important to me that I always write my books backwards. I write the ending first, and then the middle, and then the beginning. And no matter what I'm writing, it starts out like this, a big pile of messy notes. And it's okay that it's sloppy and everything's spelled wrong, and there's X's and arrows, and it's all fine, because when you're just thinking of ideas, it's only for you to see. No one is supposed to see this. And then I write it again, and again, and again, and again. All the books in your library were written over and over and over again, and it's normal, because every time you write it, you fix it a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit more. So if you're patient like I was, you too can finish your first book. Mine was called Monsters in Manhattan, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's about a boy named Mike, and he's real excited for winter break, but he has a big problem. He has a week off from school, but he also has his cousin coming for the holidays. She's a bully, the worst thing that a person can be, and she's here to ruin his entire time off from school. So Mike has only one choice. He's going to go to New York. He's going to show her all the tourist attractions, but he's also going to show her the monsters that live there and hopefully scare her away. So they meet a goblin with a long tongue that he uses to try to steal people's lunch. They meet a dragon. The first character I ever wrote, he's old and grumpy, and he's grumpy because he lives in the sewer and he can never fall asleep because of all the traffic above him. And they meet a blob. The blob lives at the museum with the dinosaur bones. Blobs don't have any bones, so he waits and hopes that some of them might fall into his slimy, sticky body. They meet a giant that lives where they put the big Christmas tree. And the giant comes to steal the giant star off the top of the giant tree so that he can make giant earrings for his giant wife. And they meet fairies. The fairies are actually pretty nice, but you have to watch your fingers because sometimes they can bite. Now, there's more characters in that book that I don't have time to show you, but I want you to know about ideas because ideas are funny things. They start out real small sometimes, but they start growing on their own. And before you know it, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happened to me because I accidentally wrote too many characters and they couldn't fit in just one book. So I had no choice. I had to write a second monster story. And in this one, it was the summer. And now Mike is ready for 2 months off from school. But he has a bigger problem on the horizon. It's not Mary Lou. It's her brother, Jimbo Joe. And he's come to ruin Mike's entire summer. So Mike is left with only one option. Go back to New York, show Jimbo new landmarks, and hopefully scarier monsters. So they go to the Museum of Art where they meet a goblin that tries to pull people into the paintings. And they meet a mummy at the Statue of Liberty that gets woken up by the 4th of July fireworks. And they meet zombies on the bus that only think about one thing, brains, big, delicious brains. They meet vampires. Normally, vampires would want to suck your blood, but not in my story. In my story, they just want a bite of your pepperoni pizza. Here's the funny part about ideas. They grow and they grow and they grow. So this story that was only supposed to be 1 book is now going to be 4 books. I've written both of these stories, but they're still waiting for the drawings because the drawings take much, much longer to do. But before I show you some other things, I want to share this with you. None of the other groups saw this. I only show this to some of the older kids because remember, the drawing takes much, much longer. And I want to show you why. Okay, so remember I just showed you those monsters books. Both of those stories are written. All the words are finished, but the drawings are not done. And I want to show you why the drawings take so long. And I'm going to show you that by showing you a book that is not finished yet. This is the book that I'm working on right now. Okay, so most of the drawings are all sketchy. Only a few of them have color. And while I'm showing you this, I want you to remember that it is going to take me about a year, 12 months to finish all these drawings. The drawings take much, much longer than the writing does. Okay, this story is called Bruce the Spruce, and it's about a Christmas tree. It's also about a family that lives in New York City, but they're moving to somewhere like upstate New York because they want to have a bigger house, but also because they're about to have a bigger family. They're going to have a baby. Boom! The baby is born on Christmas Eve, so they name her Noella. On Christmas Day, Noella's father plants a tree below his new daughter's window, and he looks up and yells, "Noella, this tree will protect you from the summer sun and the winter wind. But as this tree protects you, so must you protect it." Noella's a baby, so she doesn't understand any of that. But when she gets a little older, she brings stickers out to the circle of trees below her window, and she gives everything a name. The boulder becomes Rocco, the 2 big oak trees become Mr. and Mrs. Brown, and her birthday tree becomes Bruce the Spruce. And every day she plays on Rocco's back, and season after season, the trees look after her, and everyone is happy. Sometimes she gives them a snowman. She calls him Carrot Face. The trees are okay with Carrot Face because he only stays for 1 or 2 months out of the year. Little girls and little trees grow up quickly, so before long, Noella is off to college. But she returns every year around the holidays to visit her family and to see Bruce. And while they exchange gifts, she looks out the window and quietly whispers, "Merry Christmas, Bruce," to which he replies, "Happy birthday, Noella." Eventually she meets a boy and she falls in love, and they have a big fancy wedding underneath Bruce's watchful branches. And then they have their own children, and now there are new dolls to play on Rocco's back, and the family and the trees grow strong together. But after many, many, many years, Noella grows old. Her husband is now gone and her children have moved away, and she realizes that upstate New York winters are much too difficult for a woman her age. So she decides to move to Florida. The problem is she forgets to tell Bruce. So the next day, the news, the neighbors, and the nosy bodies all gather around for something very special. But Bruce can't figure out what it is. And then he does. He smells burning gasoline and he hears the roar of a rusty chainsaw. And right at the moment where he's aware of what's about to happen to him, everything goes black. When he wakes up, he finds himself here in Rockefeller Center, the same place where my giant lives. And now he's decorated with thousands of lights, hundreds of ornaments, and even an embarrassingly large gold star on his head. He hears the mayor below announce, "Welcome to the lighting of our New York City Christmas tree." The crowd counts down, 3, 2, 1, and he throws that enormous switch, which lights Bruce up with those thousands of lights, making him even more embarrassed. The people ice skate, sing Christmas carols, and enjoy themselves immensely, but Bruce stands there alone and ashamed of himself. Eventually, everyone has gone home. It's the end of the evening, and Bruce overhears 2 men cleaning up below. One says to the other, "Did you hear that upstate New York will receive the first snowfall of winter tomorrow night?" And Bruce hears that, the first snowfall of winter, and he decides he cannot miss it, which means he has only one choice. He needs to escape. So the next day, the police and the fire captain go to the mayor and tell him that someone has stolen the New York City Christmas tree. And the mayor panics and says, "We cannot have Christmas without a Christmas tree. Find it, find it, find it." But nobody's watching as Bruce sneaks out right in between the buildings behind them. They put up flyers. "Has anyone seen our missing Christmas tree?" But only the dog is paying attention as Bruce scoots down Fifth Avenue, heading out of town. Eventually, it's on the news. "Where, oh, where has our Christmas tree gone?" But Bruce is cleverly camouflaged behind the Dress City truck. He makes his way out. He's towards the bridge, and they're hot on his tail, but they don't know where he's going just yet until they spot a trail of fresh green needles. And they follow those needles through the night and through the woods and all the way back to the circle of trees where Bruce was planted, grown, and eventually cut down. Noella is woken up by a commotion on her front lawn, and when she looks out the window, she sees that the entire city of New York has converged on her property. The police and the fire departments, the horses and the helicopters, the citizens and the mayor have all come looking for something. She runs downstairs and says, "Someone please explain to me what this is all about." And the police captain says, "Ma'am, if you would just step aside, we'll be off your property in 2 seconds. We have just come to take our Christmas tree back." And Noella says, "Hold on. There's been a mistake. It's not your Christmas tree. This is Bruce's home. This is my home. I should never have given him away because Bruce the Spruce belongs here with me." And the mayor busts out laughing. Bruce the Spruce, what a ridiculous name for a Christmas tree. And this makes Noella very upset. So she sticks her finger right in the mayor's little nose and says, "Mr. Mayor, you are very, very rude. So you will be getting no hot chocolate at my home this evening. But the rest of you are welcome to hot chocolate tonight and every year going forward, because you are all invited to return every year around the holidays and visit both me and Bruce, because I have decided to stay but you can all return to help decorate him. And the city of New York is happy with this solution. So as the first flakes of winter begin to fall, Noella looks up at Bruce twinkling in the night sky, and she whispers, "Merry Christmas, Bruce," to which he replies, "Happy birthday, Noella." All right, so remember I said that this story has been written for a very long time, but the drawings take way longer to do than the words do. So I have to work on this almost every single day, and I have to work on all those characters in the background, and I have to add all the color to the pages, and then I got to put them together with the words because you didn't see any of the words on any of these pages, and then I got to make the cover and all of these things. So remember some of the things that I said. Okay, the way that I make a book is first I get the idea. That's usually the easiest part. First I get the idea, then I have to write the whole story. When the story is written, and that usually takes about 4 months, when that's finished, then I have to do all the drawings. That takes about 12 months. And when that's done, then it goes to a factory. And the factory is the place that puts it all together. And then they send it back to me in a whole bunch of boxes of books. And then hopefully I can share all those books with all of you. So I'm going to come back now. We have a couple of minutes. If any of you you had some questions there that I could answer. I love questions.
One of the fourth graders had a really good question. We were reading your book, Everybody Wake Up, and one of the fourth graders wondered about your use of color, because a lot of your pictures, like the one where they're in the movie theater, it's like a lot of things are purple. And then another page, I think it was the page of the baby, a lot of the things are green. And they wondered kind of what was your purpose for that? And were those colors symbolic of something?
Okay, so when I decided to do Everybody Wake Up, okay, Everybody Wake Up is a story about how she's yelling, and we can't see yelling, okay? Yelling is a sound, and that was one of the hardest things to try to figure out how I could show you in a picture what sound looked like. So there are 2 ways that I'm doing that. Number 1, when you see the pages where she yells, the light comes out, okay? Sometimes it bounces all around the page. Sometimes it comes down as sort of confetti. So what that sort of represents is the light represents the sound actually coming out of her mouth. The other way I do it is if you look at the pages where people are sleeping, they're only blue, green, or purple. And those are colors that are called the cool colors. Okay, because they're calm colors. So when people are sleeping, it's always blue, green, or purple. When they're waking up, the colors get very exciting because those colors are the reds and the oranges and the yellows and sometimes the purples too, because it shows energy. And those are called the warm colors. So those pictures get much more exciting. So that's a simple way that I show how something goes from calm to exciting, and then also how I show the light, how it comes out, or the sound, how it would come out of her mouth and bounce all around the room.
That we thought it was something similar to that. So I'm really glad that we were able to ask you. I know that we had a really good discussion about it in one of my classes. One of the kiddos asked what your first book was, which I know you talked about before, but we didn't talk about it here with this group.
Absolutely. Okay, so my first book is a book you can only find on my website because it's only an ebook. It's not a physical hardcover. It's a book called Ear, Claw, and Eddie, and it's about a man who wakes up one day and he finds there's a big purple monster living on his head. He doesn't know where it came from, and he doesn't know how to get rid of it. All he knows is that everywhere he goes, the monster goes with him. It goes to work with him. It goes to dinner with him. It goes on vacation with him. And he has to figure out how he can remove this big, giant purple monster from his head. So if you go on my website, it's easy to find that book. And there's a bunch of cool drawings you can see for it.
We have some 3rd and 4th graders who are actually using the chat. So if any of our 3rd and 4th graders have a question and you want to pop it in the chat, we might have time for 1 or 2 more. Let's see here. One of our students asked how many books you made.
Okay, so I have made 6 books that you can buy, 6 books that are real books, but I have written 15. Okay, there are 15 more books that are on my computer because remember I said that it takes much longer to do the drawings. So I have a whole bunch of stories on my computer that are just waiting for the pictures. I have a story about ants. I have a story about a mouse. Believe it or not, you kids are the older kids. I have a book that I'm working on called My Name is Butts, believe it or not. So there's a whole bunch of books that they're totally written, but the pictures take so long, they're waiting for their pictures to come.
Okay, that's good. Somebody was asking about your website, so I put that in the chat. So one of our students asked, why did Sunny and Everybody Wake Up shoot sunbeams? But I think you kind of explained that, right? You were trying to show sound.
Right, but you can also see it as that her name is Sunny, right? And it's very important for her to be awake and excited. So you can see it as that, right? It's okay if you see it as light too, okay? Because that would sort of make sense that she can do that. But really, it's showing what the sound would look like. You know, if you've ever heard of sound waves, that actually sound, you can't see it, but sound travels in waves. And that was what I was trying to show you, that like you could actually see what sound might actually look like.
One of our students asked a question, hopefully you won't be offended, but I think it's an interesting question. He said, did you ever write a book that wasn't very good and maybe you decided not to do anything with it?
Okay, that's a tricky question, okay? Because I'll answer it like this. People ask me all the time if I ever get stumped or if I ever get stuck, and they think that I'm going to say no, never, because I'm amazing, right? But that's not true. Okay, I get stumped all the time, the same like everybody else. It's normal for me to get stumped now. And in fact, I'll tell you that I get stuck on every single drawing that I do. Every single one in every book. There will be a point where I get frustrated. So what I normally do is I put it aside. And that's the best advice I can give all of you. If you get stuck, put it aside and come back to it the next day or the next week or even sometimes the next year. So the reason I said that was a tricky answer, because there are some books that I have that I'm writing and I'm kind of stuck, but that doesn't mean that I don't think they're good. They're just not good right now, but I'll most likely come back to them at another time and figure out a way to fix them and make them better. Okay. I always tell students, never say that you gave up on something. Say that you haven't finished it yet. It's more important to think of it like that.
I think that's such a good explanation. And that's what I tell the kids when they're working on their editing, because sometimes we get tired of editing. It can be kind of, for some of us, it's not the fun part. So if we do a little bit and then put it away and then come back and do a little bit, and that helps us find our mistakes too, because sometimes it's hard to see your mistake when you just wrote it because it's fresh in your brain. You know what you're thinking. So those are really good suggestions. I think we'll end with one last question, and it's one you answered a little while ago, so I think I know what you're going to say. But the question is, what is your very favorite book in the whole world?
Okay, no, I won't switch it. I would because it's the true, honest answer. Okay, so my favorite book in the whole wide world. I don't have one favorite book in the whole wide world, but I can tell you that if you go to your library and you find any book by the person named Chris Van Allsburg, okay, any book that person has done is a good book. Okay, and I'll tell you why I like him so much. Because number one, he's both the author and the illustrator. Okay, and that's what I do. I do the pictures and the words, and I like that he does that. But also, he has stories about all different things. He doesn't pick one subject. Okay, in fact, you may not realize that you know who this person is, but I bet you that you do, because he is the person that wrote Jumanji before it was a movie, and he's the person that wrote The Polar Express before it was a movie. Okay, so any of his books are good books. Technically, my favorite one is a book called The Z Got Zapped. It is just an alphabet book, but it is amazing how he does all these little pencil drawings, and he is an amazing, amazing artist. So any of the books that he has written and illustrated, you can find in your library. They're all good.
Okay, sorry, I was listening, but some of the students in the chat were asking about buying your book, so I was answering their questions. So for our 3rd and 4th graders who were wondering about buying one of Mr. Miller's books, these flyers went home. Yours was yellow. This is a fancy color one, but it's the same exact thing. And it has some information at the bottom about purchasing one of his books if you're interested. Excuse me. I have extras of these in the library. There's a whole pile of them outside of the library in a little book bin thing. So swing by and grab one of these if you'd like to purchase one of his books. I also put his website in the chat, and you can go over there and explore that too. There's lots of good stuff. Sorry, we've done 3 of these now, and they're blending together. Was it this one or the other one where you talked about your monsters?
That was the other one. That was the other one.
Okay.
But if you go there, there's so much fun stuff to do there. But there's a page called the Page O Fun, and it has all sorts of projects. It has videos. It has things you can try. Most importantly, if you go to my website, you'll be able to find my email. If you have a question that you didn't get to ask today, or if there's something you want to share with me, please do. I promise I will write you all back. I promise.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Miller. We really enjoyed your session. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us for so long today. So thank you, and we'll talk to you again someday in the future, I hope.
Perfect. You guys all have an amazing summer. You deserve it. Have as much fun as you can, okay? I'll see you next year, hopefully.
Okay. Goodbye. Bye.